afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for a company update with the President and CEO of Canterra Minerals, Chris Pennimpede. Canterra is exploring in one of the hottest, newest gold jurisdictions in Newfoundland, Canada. Canterra's flagship Wilding Lake project is adjacent to Marathon Gold's Valentine Lake deposit, which hosts nearly 5 million ounces gold. Canterra trades on the TSX Venture under the symbol CTM and the OTC under CTM-TSX.V. As usual, this presentation will contain forward-looking statements, so we encourage you to please visit the company's website for further information. Without further ado, Chris, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks. It's good to be here, Vanessa. Good to be back with the Adelaide Capital team, and I'm happy today to take everyone through our summer work program and the results that we reported last week from the first portion of that summer program. So I guess without further ado, I'll jump right into, the particulars of everything we've done so far this summer and what we're looking forward to in fall and kicking off drilling on our Wilding Gold project in central Newfoundland. So before I go into the technical details, I'll just go over the capital structure as it's changed meaningfully since I was last on with Adelaide Capital, which I think was before just the start of the summer program. The main event really is we welcomed Eric Sprott as the biggest shareholder to the company by way of private placement. He put 2.7 million into the company in July, and so got 19% of the overall share structure. So today we just shy of 5 million cash, so we're certainly well funded to conduct all of our exploration this year and well into 2022. So our shares outstanding grew a bit to 66 million. Our market capitalization is still around sort of the 20 million mark, depending on how we trade day to day. So that was really the main event, I think, from a capital structure point of view. And so, we're really happy to have Mr. Sprott on board to supplement already a strong shareholder base that featured Michael Gentili, Altius, and a strong sort of institutional fund base as well. All right, before I get into sort of our results and everything that's going on with Canterra, I'm going to speak, I guess, briefly about the macro side, or at least macro as it pertains to the island of Newfoundland and all things exploration. I think a lot of the audience seems to like to kept up to speed with gold exploration in particular on the island. It's certainly probably the most active place in North America where we see mineral exploration, particularly gold exploration right now. So you'd think by this point in the modern staking rush, or the modern gold rush on the island of Newfoundland, that everything would have been staked up. But in the last few months, you've still seen large land grabs, particularly in the north and the south part of the island, so the more remote part of the island, where you've seen large exploration blocks staked out. And most of these have been chasing what's called the Dog Bay line, which hosts everything Newfound Gold's found so far, exploits, discovery into CanStar, and then it's theorized to swing to the northwest here before joining the Valentine Lake Shear Zone, or if you prefer, the Cape Ray Shear Zone, goes by many names, but that's where our projects are located, as that feature sort of crisscrosses the central part of the island. So yeah, you've seen a lot of staking in this part, and then up here and around the northern parts of the island. Everything in buff here is sort of the rest of the claims that haven't been sort of picked out into big companies, or haven't at least been identified here. So in our part of the island, in the central part, right next to Marathon Gold's Valentine Lake feasibility stage project, you've seen mostly consolidation. There wasn't a lot of room to stake more ground in here. And so most of what you've seen is prospectors dealing property blocks to companies, and companies consolidating sort of several blocks and then starting their exploration from there. On our part, we did manage to stake what we thought was another part of the prospective geology attached to our Noel-Paul project. We did that sort of midsummer and started sort of regional scale work on that part of the project. So with the macro side now, we'll move into the local scale and discuss where we've really spent the last 4 months working away. And so really the work's been focused on these blue claims here. And particularly we focused on the Wilding block. That's where the bulk of drilling and exploration was done in the past. And it's continued to be a focus for us at Canterra this summer. We did spend sort of the tail end of the summer program focusing on the Noel-Paul block, much more broad space reconnaissance style work, trying to get us into sort of the right ballpark, if you will, in seeing where that Valentine Lake shear zone might have strong gold potential within our property boundaries here. The big discussions, I guess, on a local scale for the town of Millertown, Buckens and Buckens Junction is really Marathon Gold working towards mining. They finished the feasibility early summer, and all the signs now and all the talk of town really is that Marathon's been upgrading roads and moving in equipment, buying land for equipment laydowns, and so you're really seeing them moving towards being an actual mine. And there's a lot of excitement in the community. Basically, everyone's talking about it since it's the first mine to go into this part of Newfoundland for quite some time. So it's an exciting place to work. Anytime you're right next to a developing mine, that's a good place to be. So we'll dive now into sort of where we left this off when I was last on with Adelaide. And that at that point, we just finished winter drilling. That, of course, focused on 3 targets. It was a short program, just 1 month, so just over 2,000 meters. But we got a lot done in that month, and I think significantly advanced sort of the targets we have and the concepts we have on the project. Out of that, we drilled 1 brand new area in Dogberry, made a new high-grade discovery there. Probably the most exciting thing that came out of that program was drilling at Red Ochre. We drilled numerous holes over sort of very broad spacing, which sort of identified 700 meters of widespread gold mineralization. And then drilling at Elm incrementally added to the Elm gold veins that have been discovered previously in both the east and west directions. So the overall takeaway, I think, of that winter program was there's lots of smoke on the project, if you will. Pretty much every hole hits gold mineralization of some style, either whether it's disseminated gold or high-grade gold and quartz veins. But we hadn't yet figured out where that fire would be or where that deposit could be on the project. And so really summer then became a point in which to step back a bit to better refine the drill targeting. So where we could find that fire might exist, if you want to continue the analogy. And so really the way to do that was to go back to all the historical work, all the geophysics, all the drilling that had been done, all the surface work, and pull that into a cohesive model. And we did that with gold spot discoveries. They pull in all of the data, worked with our VPX and the rest of our technical team, and really ranked targets about, okay, this is where we know gold mineralization is, and where are there areas that look just like this, but are potentially bigger, and there could be a sizable deposit, or maybe where in the zones we did find gold mineralization, maybe we didn't the holes weren't oriented optimally to find a significant, width of gold mineralization or deposit. And then really the other step was to identify areas of the project that had seen no exploration work yet to date. So putting that all into context of a map, one of the big priorities this summer was to get data for the west part of the Wilding project. Now this is where our ground abuts Marathon's project, and where the Valentine Lake shear zone here in the teal hashed lines comes through. And so this part of the project's a bit more difficult to access for us. It's not it hasn't been clear cut or forested. So there's a lot of cover here. And so that's why it would kind of been left previously. So this was a big priority for us to get in here and conduct sort of first pass sampling and grid soils to prove our concept that gold mineralization that's focused around the shear zones in the east part of the project continues here in the west, as there's so far no reason it shouldn't geologically. So we're still waiting for results from that, but I think we're pretty confident we'll see a continuation of this same gold endowment we see on the east and central parts of the project. The other focus from sort of earlier stage fill in the gap type work was in the northeast here, and where we optioned this project from Silkeman, filling in the rest of it as the sampling was kind of cut off partway through the project. And so what this looks like is everything in blue is still pending results. So soil samples take a long time to process. And given everything we've seen with labs and assay turnaround times during the pandemic, soil samples take even longer just because they take that much longer to process and prep versus a rock sample. So we're still eagerly awaiting sort of everything from the west and all the fill the gap work, except for here in the Northeast, where we had our first results come back last week. And we're happy to report that there are several samples here above 100 ppb gold. And to put that into context, some of our best results in soil work on the project are sort of above 100 ppb, and there's not very many of them, and they tend to be focused in areas where we've then made drill discoveries. So this is a meaningful result for us, and we look forward to doing the rest of the work to move that to a drill target as soon as we can. What was interesting to us is it occurs exactly where we have, or us and Goldspot identified with the geophysics and some of the historical data, a meaningful lineament that trends here to the northeast, and the gold anomalies in the soil here basically line up right along that. So that's a significant outcome and continues to point towards the overall gold endowment of the project. And so I'm going to talk now just specifically about rock sample results that we've received so far, because I think it highlights where we expect the focus of drilling to be here in the fall of 2021. So firstly, around the Elm Zone, we continue to find good grade rock samples to the north, pointing towards a possible extension of the Elm Zone veins. And a lot of this comes from historical trench work was done that they were failed trenches in a way where maybe they got to bedrock but filled in with water or bog right away, and so there was no samples taken from them by previous operators. But in going back to them this summer, after some rain and weather had sort of pushed the muck aside, you could see some of the outcrop that had been sort of dug up from that. And so sampling that came back and showed that there's probably a natural extension to the Elm Zone to the north, or perhaps a parallel vein to the north. And we'll look to follow that up with the drill rig this fall. The other major thing that came out of all the targeting work and then the rock sampling is the Valentine Lake Shear Zone, or what we think is the Valentine Lake Shear Zone here in the north. It hasn't been tested by a drill rig yet to confirm. We found this very strong lineament of golden soil that trends in the down ice direction right from the shear zone. And to me, that's very exciting because it's a direct analog to the Marathon gold deposit model, where you have the Valentine Lake intrusive suite in the north, Rogerson Lake conglomerate in the south. You have a destructive feature in the magnetics, and then gold usually lining up right along that. And so we see that in the golden soil, and now we see that in golden rocks with samples up to 0.5 gram. Everything looks right at surface. Where we do see rock, there's very little to see in this part of the project. So this is certainly going to be a high priority target for drilling this fall. The other major thing I think that came out of the rock sampling and trenching program we did this summer was the expansion of red ochre. And so we made a new trench discovery there that I think points towards red ochre being bigger than we had originally thought. And so this target continues to prove to be sort of the biggest in scale and certainly probably the most prospective at this stage. And so we're just going to zoom into that now and look at it in a bit more detail. And so if you recall, the red ochre zone or complex, I think referred to it as in the past, was sort of 700 meters in broad space drilling, where we got gold mineralization in both, sort of large disseminated widths, 17 meters of a gram, but also we'd get higher grades. I think the highlight out here was 8 grams per ton over sort of a meter. So it's a combination of high grade veins and more disseminated style gold mineralization. From the work we did this summer, 3 groups, including internally and external consultants and Goldspot, highlighted this feature, that pink dashed line, as being a high priority target for future work. It's a strong magnetite disruptive feature or destructive feature. And that's important at Red Ochre because we know gold's associated with magnetite destruction from all the results we've had in the past. So this feature is by far the biggest magnetite destructive feature we see. And it also it occurs in an area where we now have rock control and samples up to 0.6 grams per ton, basically all along it. As well as gold in the soil. We see some of our highest gold in soil numbers right along this lineament. So we're quite excited to drill test this. This could potentially be where we see bigger blowouts of mineralization with a bigger widths of magnetite destruction, and at least in the magnetics. So, I think what we're seeing is an evolved knowledge of this Red Ochre zone. And I think we better know where to target the next drill holes here to hopefully increase the widths of the same style of gold mineralization. So where are we going to drill? It's always the question. We have enough budget, or we budgeted originally this summer for 5,000 meters of drilling, or summer fall. So we pushed all that off into fall to let our surface results come back, given the lab lead times. And so now we're in a position to start probably this week, actually turning a rig at site and really focus in on sort of three main concepts to spend these 5,000 meters. And so the first concept is that theorized Valentine Lake shear zone, or the direct marathon deposit setting that we see in the north here, that we really identified from work this summer through prospecting, mapping, and reinterpreting all the geophysics. So we really like this target. We think it's always being the direct analog to marathon, that makes us pretty excited. And everything we've seen so far in the surface work sort of points towards the same setting existing. And so now all we have to do is answer the question with the drill bit, whether you can still get gold widths and grades similar to what they see at marathon along this Valentine Lake shear zone. So we've planned numerous holes up here. And those will be definitely a high priority for the start of our fall program. And then the second batch of drill priority targets is really going sort of between the known zones and expanding the zones like we just talked about at Red Ochre, in trying to just build continuity and grade and width through better targeting at the known zones. So through all of the summer work we've done, we've seen a lot of reason that the Elm Zone veins and the Alder vein systems, they probably could connect. And so that would make this, a meaningful size in terms of a mineral system. And then, of course, at Red Ochre, as we discussed, we think there's reason to believe that there's bigger target concepts within the known Red Ochre complex where we might see more significant gold widths and grades come out of. So that's really the second main focus of drilling, is trying to expand the known zones and improve the continuity of those zones. And then the third main one is looking at new areas and trying to make a new discovery, just like we did at Dogberry in winter. And so there's quite a few targets on the project that had seen some work in the past, but this summer we were able to advance them to a point where we're comfortable in putting a drill rig on them and going for that new discovery. So things like the bridge showing and the third spot showing, these were both sort of surface showings, but have now been backed up by further soil sampling, and of course all the targeting work we did and compilation. And then the Valentine Lake intrusive targets, which had been tagged into previously, but by reinterpreting all of the magnetics, we think we have a better way to drill them now in where we might see gold mineralization in the Valentine Lake intrusion below the Rogerson Lake conglomerate that dominates this part of the project. So all in all, quite a big drill program, the biggest that's ever been embarked on for the Wilding project. Our previous, obviously, was 2,000 meters, and then previous operators put 2,000 meters in as well. So basically double the size of any past program, and certainly lots of results to look forward to out of this fall drill program. And so to summarize sort of the milestones and catalysts for the project going forward, I've talked, I think, over and over again about, we've completed all of the sort of reprocessing original data and building a new sort of concept model for the project and where we might be best to make a major discovery on the project. So that part was done. Summer exploration results on the back of that work have started to come through now with reporting those first rock samples and soil samples last week. And we expect those to continue sort of over the next month and a half. And then drilling, we expect to start the rig turning any day now. And really 5,000 meters would probably take us into mid-November, early November, depending on how fast and how much moving of the rig we do. So we should be in a position to have some drill results in Q4. Fingers crossed with all the lab delays, but certainly into early 2022 as well. And so that, I think, really summarizes the bulk of the summer work that's been done and that we have results for, everything we did sort of leading into that work, and now putting that all together and the drill program we're about to embark on here at Canterra in the fall of 2021. So with that, I'll turn it back to Vanessa and Adelaide for any questions that might come out of this presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. I'm applauding. You and your team have clearly made some great strides over there in Newfoundland in your just under a year exploring, is from what I understand. So how often have you been to camp this season?
I've tried to go every month over the course of the summer. It's gotten easier, I guess, since vaccines have come into play and Newfoundland allowed fully vaccinated people there in late June, early July. So yeah, I'm there basically every month to check in and pester the technical team there, and to see what we're uncovering as we track along.
That's fantastic. I'm glad to hear about boots on the ground. And what gets you, so yeah, the big question, what gets you excited today? I mean, you touched on your geological understanding at Wilding. Can you summarize that again for us, just to hit it home?
Sure. Yeah, I think what gets me most excited today is the development of some of the new gold targets on the project. I think when we inherited the project, there's lots of widespread gold mineralization sort of from red ochre to elm, but not a lot outside of that, or not a lot that really held together into like something you could point towards as a bona fide drill target. So I think today, I'm most excited that this northern Valentine Lake shear zone target seems to be panning out, and we're at a point now where we can put the terrible truth machine on it and see what it is, and if our theories that it is the direct analog holds together. And I think the other thing is just the better targeting we've done that sort of outline these large features which could point towards sort of areas of bigger gold endowment potentially. I think that has, is significant for the overall project and just shows our understandings evolving, and we're just better able to put together everything we know about the gold mineralization on the project, and then everything we see in the other data sets, and put it into a cohesive target that you can then test with the drill, and sort of determine if you're right or not.
Right. Thank you for that. For us non-geos here, if I remember correctly, you had described in a previous webinar that generally in the world, orogenic gold deposits are found within a kilometer or two of a structure. Is that something that you're still looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in general, orogenic deposits occur sort of within a kilometer or two of the primary shear zone or fault system. And so pretty much everything we've looked at, I'll just bring up the map so far, the Valentine Lake shear zone sort of crisscrosses all the deposits through Marathon and then up through everything we know so far, and then continues on through our Noel-Paul project. So, my priority firstly when acquiring these projects was to get it, as much a kilometer on either side of this major fault corridor as possible to increase your odds of finding a deposit. And so certainly everything we've done to date has has more or less focused in and around that area, obviously at different stages, since Wilding's more advanced and at the point of drilling, whereas Noel-Paul here is more in an earlier phase of, let's sample on either side of this for the entire trend of it, and see if there's anywhere where we get some gold response in the surface or subsurface. So that still holds true. That's still what we're looking at, and I think if you look more generally at the macro and everyone exploring within the central Newfoundland belt, that more or less holds true. You can see through even the claims are staked in a way that they basically capture sort of a few kilometers on either side of that main fault corridor, because that's just, so far, that's where the gold's been identified throughout the 200 kilometers as it crisscrosses the island. So I'd say that definitely holds true here in Newfoundland as it does in other orogenic belts.
Wow, awesome explanation. Thank you. When you showed Noel-Paul right now, that made me think of the extension to your claim block, about 28 kilometers that you added on earlier this summer. Was that in the works a long time ago, given the busyness there, given the activity in the area?
Yeah, I really have to give our exploration manager, Dave Evans, the tip of the hat for that one. He had known about this region for a while, or at least had identified it, and it was sitting open. And I guess as our project evolved and as we found everything at Red Ochre within those felsic volcanics, he identified that the mag signature and the same felsic volcanics probably exist here on this portion that we called Carter Lake at the time that we staked in summer. So we thought it would be smart to stake that while the opportunity was there, in case Red Ochre continues to prove to be something significant, that we had every bit of that sort of felsic volcanic setting next to the Rogerson Lake structural corridor, as we could. So it's more of like a future thinking. If things continue to pan out in that geological setting at Wilding and Noel-Paul, then it makes sense to have as much of it as you can, just to increase your odds of finding a deposit.
Yeah, absolutely. Way to be ahead of the curve there, Canterra. And what else? Oh, I was going to ask you about the, so I'm looking at your claim block here, and lots of activity, obviously, at Wilding, Noel-Paul. How much of this 285 square kilometer claim block have you covered so far with exploration?
We basically covered all of it this summer. Right now, we're still working towards filling in a few gaps sort of in here. So base probably like 270 or 260 square kilometers of it. Certainly everything within Noel-Paul is earlier stage, but it's done in sort of a grid fashion, where if there is something there, we probably identify it by a single point anomaly, and that would tell us where to go do future work. So that it was a big priority for me this summer, was to be able to assess the entire package by the end of the year. And so we will have done that and basically walked the entire thing and taken samples in a systematic way across the entire property block by the end of the year. So we'll have that ability to know where to focus on in 2022, especially in the earlier stage part of the property package.
Well, fantastic. Yeah, absolutely important to do that methodical exploration before putting that diesel-powered truth seeker. It's expensive. You touched on just west of the west portion of Wilding that it joins Marathon ground, and the little work that was done there. You said something about it being covered, like lots of trees, lots of cover, so difficult to sample. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, that's a good question. And the reason, like, I'll go back a bit. Marathon originally made their first sort of deposit discovery in 2015, and till that point, this part, the Wilding project, didn't exist. And so it wasn't until forest roads were pushed into basically here that exploration work was done, and that was the first sort of results that came out of work in this area. And so I think the first result was sort of 75 grams per ton, which led to this being staked. But I think without the forestry work, there's very little rock to see in this part of Newfoundland, which is why it remained unstaked, even though you had several 100,000 ounces right next door. And so what I think we see in the Wilding project right now is there's been no logging here. This has all been clear cut. And so you can, by clear cutting, you push over trees, you expose rock. You can just see rock just from vegetation sort of being moved around. It just makes it easier. It makes it easier to walk the ground and get vehicles in as well. Whereas this part has seen no forest work whatsoever. So roads don't really go into it, though there is a northern or sort of southern access into it that can be done. But really there's no rock to see. And I think that's why previously there had been no focus here, is there hadn't been any reason, no obvious reason to. And so what I think you have to rely on at that point is to go in and do the soil sampling and get the gold and geochemical response from this region to see if there's sort of the natural extension of both Marathon and our central or eastern part of the project into this western side.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I saw some photos on your social media that contain augers, so I guess those are getting down through the layer, whatever the veneer of till or whatever it might be. Would you need to have permits if you needed to cut down trees and make forest access, etc.?
Yeah, eventually. So the first stage is to establish if there is gold anomalies worthy of following up. And then if there is, then, we probably move to trenching, or maybe we just move straight to drilling, depending on, sort of the anomalies and how well they sort of line up together. But certainly, yeah, you would need to then permit that, just as we permitted this side. Thankfully, Newfoundland permitting is quite easy and quite efficient, especially compared to the rest of Canada. So in general, it's not difficult to do, and gaining access is probably as simple as opening up old forest roads when things were logged here in sort of the 30s and 40s. So it's all possible. We just need a reason to do it first, and so we'll wait for the first results from this side of the project to come back, and then go from there.
Okay, sounds great. And speaking of the ground and people, I'm thinking of your local stakeholders. Any comments on either the workforce, local community in that regard?
The only thing to report on that front is, we work a lot with the community of Millertown. It's where we're based in Newfoundland. And, they're certainly fully supporting and ramping up to support Marathon Gold's future mine. And so you're seeing a lot of excitement around that, and that's great to see. And the central part of Newfoundland is very focused on mining in general. The Buckins mine operated there for over 30 years, and then Duck Pond Tech operated just off our northern boundary from 2007 to 15. So, it's an area that's very familiar with mining and welcomes it. So I think as far as stakeholders go so far, it's, we employ a lot of the people from Millertown to work on our projects and to help with core logging and core cutting and all the aspects of exploration. So I think, as far as stakeholder relations go, it's, everyone's well invested into the mining and exploration front here in central Newfoundland.
Going back to the assays, we are looking at log jams, I'm guessing, or not guessing, but everybody knows they're backed up.
Yeah, it seems like soil samples are taking probably like 10 weeks at this stage, maybe 8 if you're lucky. And that's just for the gold number. The geochem number takes longer because that goes to Vancouver. I think our VPX's comment the other day when he dropped samples off at the lab there in Newfoundland, the only lab in Newfoundland, Eastern Analytical, is that he'd never seen so many samples at one assay lab before. So certainly you're seeing the results of many, probably the most companies I've ever seen in one jurisdiction at a time, all sort of well-funded and sort of pushing the pace of exploration especially through summer. In winter, we had a lot of, or pretty good turnaround. I think it was 4 weeks on the rock front while we were drilling. And you could rush that and we were able to get 10 days. Sorry, my dog's still bouncing around in the background. But I think what we're seeing now is rocks are still faster. So sort of 5-6 weeks 6 weeks, probably more likely, but soils take a lot longer. So with the drill results, you kind of expect first, say the drill turns on this week, you probably see first results come back probably towards the end of October, early November, and then that'll just bleed into 2022. So yeah, it's sort of the 6 to 8 week for rocks right now, and that just is what it is. It's kind of been the same throughout the pandemic everywhere, whether you're in Nevada or BC. But yeah, it is what it is at this point.
So we'll have to ask our investors to please be patient while the things beyond our control are being worked on.
Yes, indeed.
Are there any, feel free to ask or answer or not, but any majors kicking tires in the area?
No one's really put their hand up in Newfoundland, that they're, no one's taken a toehold or like active portion of any one company yet, or at least to my knowledge. I think at one point way in the past, Agnico had a stake in Marathon. But just from my asking around, they're all looking. I think anytime you have this much exploration in what was historically not a very explored jurisdiction in terms of gold, I think that gets their attention. And so I think they're all paying attention. We're just all waiting to see what's the first play, if there is one.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. And pivoting now to your share structure, congratulations on raising, on acquiring Mr. Sprott as one of your major shareholders. Was it Sprott himself, or was it Sprott Capital?
Yeah, no, it was Eric Sprott himself through his holding company, as he does most of his investments, and most of the companies on the island now feature him as an investor in some way, shape, or form. But it was great to have him on board. He's certainly one of the more well-known resource investors in our space, probably the most well-known. And I think he carries a lot of cachet and knows what he likes, and his investments usually pan out. So I was really excited to have him on board to already back up, Michael Gentili, who's also really well known as resource investment and quite savvy on the exploration side of things. He tends to do earlier stage stories, which are obviously more risky, but does really well. So I think having both of them in it is a great vote of confidence for our technical team and the assets we've assembled to date.
Well, good on you and Canterra. So you've got about shy of 5 million in the bank. You're about to start your 5,000 meter drill program. What are we missing here? You've got this awesome knowledge, new gold targets. Looks like a mineralized system that's widespread. What am I missing, Chris?
Yeah, I don't think you're really missing anything. I think that more or less sums it up. We're well positioned, not only cash wise, but I think target wise now to get out there and drill and see what comes of it. I think we've spent all the summer really refining our targets, and we're in the position now to best place drill holes to deliver a major discovery on the projects. And we also have the cash balance to, it's 5,000 meters, obviously won't use all that 5 million. So if we do make some significant discovery, we have the ability to scale up and go for it without having to go to market again. So right now it's just really a lot of optionality, I guess, within Canterra as we go through our fall drill program here.
Excellent. Well, you're in a great position, Chris. Thank you so much for the update. If that's all from your end, I just want to thank the audience for tuning in today. Please check out Canterra's social media as well. On Twitter, the handle is @Canterra with 2 R's C. And thank you again, Chris. We're so excited. We love gold, we love Newfoundland, and we love following your story. So all the best to you.
Great. Thanks very much, Vanessa, and thanks, Adelaide, for having us today.